Rifampin, an antibiotic that can kill the organisms before they cause invasive disease. Rifampin, usually reserved for the treatment of tuberculosis, has few serious side effects, but it does cause one rather curious transformation. It turns urine, tears, and other body fluids reddish-orange. The doctors and nurses who cared for these meningitis patients also took rifampin prophylaxis. We had so many cases that my urine ran red for a month. I don't recall ever seeing orange tears. Epidemics of communicable and potentially lethal infections evoke very different official responses in different settings. In Haiti, very real epidemics of anthrax and meningococcal meningitis did not even result in an investigation. When I recently asked the beleaguered public health officer why he did not come to investigate, he responded that, although he did have access to a jeep, he did not have money for gasoline. Meanwhile, in the United States, even the theoretical possibility of bioterrorism has moved hundreds of millions of dollars into research and conferences on a subject of dubious public health significance. The U.S. government has certainly poured substantial resources into preventing and responding to bioterrorism. In January 1999, President Clinton presented to Congress a budget that included $10 billion for anti-terrorism efforts, $1.4 billion of which was allocated to biological and chemical attack preparedness, a twofold increase from 1997. In his almost incomprehensible remarks announcing the initiative, Clinton allowed that there is no market for the kind of things we need to develop, and if we are successful, there will never be a market for them. But we have got to do our best to develop them. In contrast to these hypothetical epidemics, very real epidemics are being ignored. In a recent editorial, Cohen and colleagues remark, "The proponents of anti-bioterrorism programs have it backwards. Instead of pumping more resources into ill-advised and risky bioterrorism programs, we should build national and international public health systems that can adequately reduce, detect, and respond to natural disease outbreaks and industrial chemical spills. Then, in the unlikely event of a bioterrorism attack, these systems will be available to manage the challenge." Infections and inequalities. In a wealthy country, the specter of biological warfare, for which there is exceedingly slender evidence, triggers a sort of officially blessed paranoia. In a poor country tightly bound to the rich one, real infections continue to kill off the poor, and we are told sternly to look harder for cheaper, more cost-effective interventions. At best, those of us working in places like Haiti can hope for trickle-down funds if the plagues of the poor are classed as U.S. security interests. I cannot look back at the predictions made in the first edition of this book with the slightest satisfaction. Oh, they've all come true. If you want to feel like a prophet these days, predict that the poor will continue to do poorly, even in boom times. Take tuberculosis. Infections and Inequalities made the bold prediction that the poor would continue to die of readily treated tuberculosis, and that newer multi-drug resistant strains would continue to spread. On the former score, take the example of Dominic, a 26-year-old man from a town far from the clinic. In Chapter 8 of this book's first edition, I noted that TB deaths were exceedingly rare in the area of central Haiti, served by a comprehensive, community-based TB project. But for those beyond the boundaries of our project, TB remains the scourge it has been for centuries. Just a month or so ago, Dominic reached the clinic in terrible shape, gaunt and pale and bearded. I remarked that he looked somehow Christ-like. Dominic could scarcely breathe. His chest film showed complete destruction of his left lung, even though he said he'd been sick for only 5 months. He died shortly after starting therapy, collapsing in mid-sentence as he spoke to his mother. The pain of starting therapy too late does not diminish with experience, I've learned. Nor did knowing that Dominic will be one of millions to die of tuberculosis lessen the pain. Had I still been on rifampin prophylaxis, I might have seen, just then, what orange tears look like. Turning to the second prediction, that strains of TB resistant to rifampin and isoniazid, the most powerful anti-tuberculosis drugs, would spread. We do not need to turn to Russia or northern Lima, the MDR-TB hotspots mentioned in this book. Nor do we have to look to the latest global surveillance updates, which paint a grim picture of rising rates of drug resistance in these and other sites. We see that this prediction has come true even in Haiti, a country with supposedly little in the way of MDR-TB, because rifampin was not routinely used there until recently.